Welcome back, your host, Alencia Johnson.
How we doing? I know it's the end of the day. How we doing? Y'all been at the bar. That's what's happening. Well, look, we are at our last panel. First of all, thank you, April Verrett and Alfonso, for such a dynamic conversation. And we are at our last panel where we're going to talk about the future of democracy, tying all of this together, and then we will have a reception. And so I would love to welcome the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, to the stage. I was about to say, I know y'all seen him on TV, giving someone that work, okay? And also the former ambassador under President Obama, Ron Kirk, who is also the former Dallas mayor. And you've seen our moderator a little bit earlier today, Miss Ashley Etienne.
The people love you. The people love you. Okay, listen, this is now my wheelhouse. So I'm feeling really comfortable in this conversation. As you both know, and I'll tell the audience, I've had the distinct privilege and honor of running communications for the two most powerful women in American politics, Vice President Kamala Harris and former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and worked in the Obama White House and learned a lot. And I just want to start by saying, learned a lot about power, about what it means to lead, about the sacrifices that both of you make. So I just want to start by saying that I appreciate your commitment to public service and all the sacrifices you and your family and everybody around you have made for you to represent our nation and represent our people and our community well. So if you guys don't mind, can you give them another round of applause for their commitment to service? It is probably one of the least appreciated jobs one could have in this current environment, but one of the most important jobs that one could have. So if you don't mind, let's get right into it. Okay, great. So as America approaches a crossroad, the question of who we are and who we want to be has never been more urgent. In this moment, marked by polarism, disinformation, and decline in trust of institutions, we want to explore the bold ideas that shape the next era of civic life, governance, and leadership with the two of you. So I'd love to start with what just happened today, if you don't mind. As you all know, both chambers of Congress have passed what is being deemed the president's mega bill, the tax cut bill, which will be devastating to communities here in Louisiana, all over the nation. I'd love to get a sense from you of what's really happening right now in Washington, if you don't mind. I think so many of us are feeling unsure, there's no clarity, it feels like the world is upside down, feel like there's a lack of leadership. Governor, you've spoken about this very eloquently, the need for Democrats and people to lean in, that the people have the actual power in this moment. So I'd love for you to give a little perspective on what just happened in Washington now, and what do you see as the greatest challenges for the Democratic Party following today, or even opportunity after today? Because I see it as kind of a great opportunity in many ways. So Governor, I would love to start with you if you don't mind.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and great to see everybody here. And thank you for your service. You know, you're aggrandizing people who get elected to public office, but just to be clear, it's many people who serve in senior roles and staff who really make us successful. And I feel that about my own staff, and I know that's true about you and the people that you've worked for. There's a reason why those two women are the two most powerful women in politics today, and it's because people like you went to work for them and made them great.
Thank you.
I'm thinking about, I have a smile on my face thinking about you and thinking about those two great women. But I have to say I've been more than perturbed about what has been happening in our country, and specifically what happened today. Think about how people feel. Well, here in Louisiana, where 40% of people in Speaker Mike Johnson's district are Medicaid recipients and won't be after this bill goes into effect, many of them. people are going to lose their health care. They're going to lose more than just, the ability to go see a doctor. They're going to lose life-saving drugs. They're going to lose life-saving treatments. People are going to die as a result of what happened in Washington today. Every Republican voted for this thing, and every Democrat voted against it. And anybody who believes that we ought to have universal health care, or if you just believe that we ought to do the best we can for the most vulnerable people in our society, you can't help but take note that there's one party that's standing up for people's ability to survive and thrive, and another party that's trying to take those things away. And why are they doing it? They're doing it to give a massive tax cut to the wealthiest people in the country. I don't know how they go back to their districts and look people in the eye and explain what they did. Because you're handing money to Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and taking money away, truly taking money away, and food assistance and health care from people who just need a helping hand, just a little bit of a hand up. And so it's quite disturbing. I think that I believe that the American public sees through it. If you look at all the polls, I don't know, again, why the Republicans, I think they're afraid of Donald Trump, and that's why they voted for it. But the American public, I think, sees through this. Look at the polls. This bill is highly unpopular. And for those of us who think it ought to be reversed, we're going to have to make sure that people understand and connect that what happened today is the Republican Party's platform. That is what they're about. Take away from, it's reverse Robin Hood. It's take away from the poorest, most vulnerable people and give it to the wealthy.
And it seems like the pressure is now going to be on these governors to close the gap where the federal government has stepped out, because it's not just this bill, but it's even the shrinking of government and services that we rely on. And it seems like there's going to be more pressure on the governors. Do you feel that? Do you agree with that?
I 100% agree there's a lot of pressure in the states. I will also tell you that there's no chance that any governor, I don't care what state you're a governor of, and I can tell you about Illinois, that when they take away $7 billion in health care, where we were providing 700, that's the match, 10%, for the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. When they take away $7 billion, we don't have $7 billion to put back into the system to make up for it. There's no chance we could do that. And so now the question is, how do we save our hospitals? Because it's hospitals that are going to close. That's the first thing you're going to see. Hospitals close. Well, the first thing you're going to see is people losing their health care and dying. The second thing you're going to see is, in Illinois, we estimate that potentially somewhere between 5 and 9 hospitals will close, and many of them in rural areas. So you're already driving, let's say, an hour or an hour and a half to get to a hospital. Now you've got to possibly drive 2.5 hours. If you need emergency care, there's no life flight that can get to you fast enough. There's no way for you to get the care that you need. So we're basically taking ourselves back into the 19th century for many people. And again, it's because of Donald Trump and his policies to basically hand that money over to the wealthiest people in the country.
So, Mr. Mayor, the impact of this bill will have an incredible rippling effect. I think about people like me that are caregivers for our parents. So if my father can't be on Medicaid, then that puts more pressure on me to close the gap economically in terms of his finances. You've served as mayor. Tell me the wisdom in legislating against your own constituents. Like, that's the part I can't really wrap my head around. It feels like to me the dirty little secret in politics is the states that are the least educated and the poorest states in the union are red states. And you have someone like the speaker is double downing on that. This bill is double downing on that. Tell me what do you think the wisdom in that is? I mean, you've served as a mayor.
I want to say I agree with everything the governor said, and I'm not going to try to give you a wisdom for that. But I would make this observation. You were saying that people there's no clarity in Washington, no leadership. Yes, there is. And to me, there's a lot of clarity and a lot of leadership. And they've told you what they were going to do.
Okay.
And what I've heard from friends over and over again, I can't believe this happened. I was like, now you can tell me you're disappointed.
Okay.
you cannot tell me you're surprised. Because I don't blame Donald Trump.
Amen to that, right?
Because Donald Trump told you who he was. He told you what he wanted to do. He told you what his priorities were. They told you they were going to attack women's basic reproductive rights. They were going to attack access to the ballot. They were going to throw people out of this country. And I think part of what we are seeing is a lot of Americans who, for whatever reason, created a fiction or got comfortable in a world that, well, they're only going to do Haitians.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, they're not going to come after us.
They were living in an alternate universe.
And when they're doing DEI, you know, they're just talking about black folk. They ain't talking about women. And they're not going to deport my people. And so a little bit of what we're seeing is, in order to confront the ugliness of what we're seeing, is we have to look in the mirror. Because in my experience, having been privileged to not only serve as a mayor of a major city, but the unique experience of representing the United States around the world as U.S. trade representative under President Obama, is the first time Donald Trump was elected, we accepted that as the exception to the 250-year rule of trying to perfect this union.
Right.
The second time he was elected, I don't get calls, and maybe Governor, from my former colleagues saying, what's up with you? They're asking, what's up with America now? What is it about you that people so willingly took actions that voted against their interests? And I think to some degree, we all took for granted the comfort, the balance that we could vote for a certain party, but know that we had a Nancy Pelosi that would protect women's reproductive rights. We had a Barack Obama that wouldn't let them go too far. But what we're getting is a lesson of what happens when you give one party, one philosophy, all the tools of power. So don't be calling the governor and complaining to him when you've given them the White House, the Senate, the Congress, and to a large degree, the courts. And so we are going to have to make do, live with the reality of what this is. But as the governor and I was talking backstage, we do have to take a breath and look at this from a historical perspective. We have been through moments of pain before. Now, for a lot of young people, you haven't been through anything this extraordinary, but there is a way forward and there is a way back. And we have to learn from this, collectively act on our belief that we don't think it's radical that poor kids ought to have access to school lunches in the summer, that people ought not lose their jobs, their houses, their families over a lack of access to health care. Acting on our belief that we know we have become the unique country that we have because we've opened our doors to people from every faith, every creed around the world, and then try to rebuild those lessons, those coalitions that take us forward. But when somebody tells you what they believe and they hold the highest, most powerful office in the world, maybe you should believe. You know, the first time there was a saying that progressive took Trump literally, but not seriously, but not literally. Yeah. Well, you better take them both.
So I appreciate what you said, Mr. Mayor. But if I had to guess, I mean, I think this is a fair statement. No one in this room probably voted for Donald Trump. So I love to talk about.
I don't know. He didn't get there by accident.
Is it a bad assumption? It's a bad assumption. I mean, people are clapping. I don't know. I said I was making an assumption. Are y'all saying I'm making an ass of myself? The people are saying I'm making an ass of myself. The people are saying I'm making an ass of myself, okay? All right, okay, listen. Maybe a few of y'all. Wait. No, listen, the governor said that you should raise your hand, but I feel like they're already pointing them out in the middle section right over here. Okay, all right, listen, I made an assumption. I made a little bit of an ass of myself. So some of y'all voted for him, but let's say the plurality did not, okay? Okay, so here we go. Let's stay focused, okay? Because we only have these two gentlemen for a little moment in time. But Mr. Mayor, you made a good point, which is that we have to learn the lessons. So, Mr. Governor, I'd love for you to weigh in on what do you think are the lessons in this moment? What do you think are the big lessons that came out of November, those themes that came out of November? And both of you are Democrats. So I'd love for you to really speak more specifically to the Democratic Party and, again, what were the lessons that came out for the party coming out of November and just sort of how you see things right now. I mean, you've said some really incredible things. I mean, on the stump recently, your speeches that you've been given in Illinois are incredibly powerful. I mean, with clarity and purpose, your words. I'd just love for you to just impart sort of what you think are the lessons coming out of November and how we should be moving forward as a Democratic Party.
I first want to disagree with His Excellency. He is an ambassador, after all, in addition to being a former mayor. I want to disagree with you just about one thing, which is I actually don't think he told you who he is. He told you he was not going to cut Medicaid. Yeah.
Repeatedly, yes.
Repeatedly. He told you that, well, he wanted to give the states the ability to make decisions about whether they were going to allow you to get an abortion, have your reproductive rights. And the Supreme Court did that. And then he took office pretending that that's all he was going to do. And now he's cutting Planned Parenthood funding. He's actually disallowing other funding for other things if you're allowing abortions in your state. So he lied. I mean, he lied. And so one of the lessons, yeah, I mean,
somebody didn't vote for Trump out there.
Now, look, the mayor and me wants to go. This is the Global Black Economic Forum, not the Global Black Messianic First Baptist Church of Christ.
No, listen, the people need to go to church,
we appreciate the... So I'm just saying...
Amen. Amen.
Hold on. Just hold up a little bit. Just
the people need a little church these days.
This is where I chime in and say, preach. Actually, we're going to have to be a little messianic about this. The fact is that this plays into my answer to your question, which is, one thing we need to stop doing, and I know you want me to look backward and tell you what I think we did wrong.
Sure.
But we got to stop arguing about how, what are the major changes in the Democratic Party's philosophy that we all need to contemplate here. I don't know about you, but there are some basic fundamental things about being a Democrat. It's why I'm a Democrat, okay? Let's start with, we're the party of the Voting Rights Act. We're the party of the Civil Rights Act. We're the party that created Medicaid. We're the party that created Medicare. We're the party that created Social Security. Guess what the Republicans are doing right now? Tearing it all down. They're taking away your civil rights, your voting rights, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all those things. Look, we can have disagreements about future forward kind of policies. What are we going to do about artificial intelligence and how that's going to impact jobs in the workplace? We're going to have to talk about that and figure that out because it's probably going to put people out of work. So that's one thing, but those are things we'll work on. Right now, everything you care about, everything I care about is under siege by this Congress. And in 2026, if we don't get a majority in at least the House of Representatives, and we're only 5 votes away, if we don't get at least a majority, we're done. I mean, this country, I am not sure that in 2028 that we're going to have a fair election. And a lot will have been torn apart. And I think we all have to be prepared. Listen, Medicaid's being torn apart. We all have to, and you're going to see a lot more over the next year and a half. So the question is, what are we going to do to rebuild it? Okay. They had a Project 2025. Oh, that's another thing. Donald Trump said, oh, no, that's not my plan. They're doing exactly Project 2025. So we're going to have our own plan for 2029. But if you really want just a short version of what I think we did wrong, here's what I will tell you. I think we had a lot going against us in this last election. We just did. I have a lot of respect for Joe Biden. If he didn't want to run for re-election, he should have said that in 2023. I do genuinely have a lot of respect for him, and he did do a lot of things that I think are good for this country, and he'll be remembered in history for having done some of those things. But we had our party's nominee essentially step aside. With 108 days, the vice president took over and was in a bind, right? It's hard to criticize Joe Biden because he chose her to be the vice president, and he was right to do that. But it's hard for her to criticize Joe Biden. But Joe Biden was somebody that, if you wanted to win in 2024, you probably needed to acknowledge there were things that he did wrong. And then, the last thing I'll say is, so 108 days to get a message out there. And what really bothers me is that the fundamental things that I think matter to people in this country that we're all talking about now because we understand that we missed it. Affordability. I mean, genuinely, if there is one thing that was not talked about enough, was affordability. So I'll just give you the one thing I'll tell you that you never heard once in the 2024 election and we should be hearing about. And that's this. $7.25 is the minimum wage in this country. $7.20, that's $14,000 a year if you work full time. $14,000 a year. It used to be that we would say, well, maybe one person could live on that, but you can't raise a family on that. One person can't live on $14,000, right? So we Democrats, if you ask every Democrat in Congress, they will tell you they are for raising the minimum wage. You never heard the nominee or the party saying anything about raising the minimum wage in the last election. It's very popular. $7.25 is not enough. We can all argue about what the number should be, but it's not $7.25, it's a lot more. If you ask every Republican what they believe, they don't want to raise the minimum wage, not a single one of them. And about 30 or 40% of the people, and we're talking about people elected to Congress, 30 or 40% of them think we shouldn't have a minimum wage at all. Now, if you put that in front of the American public, we would win. And that's just one of about 5 or 6 really important things, like, am I getting a wage that makes sense, for the work that I'm doing? Am I able to raise a family on that wage? Am I able to get health care? The basic things the Democratic Party stands for. We gave up on health care. Where was our health care policy? Right? Obamacare passed. Terrific. It was a great advancement. Well, nothing's happened since then. And insurance companies are taking advantage of you. Pharmacy benefit managers are taking advantage of you. We've dealt with that in my state, but I'm one state. We have to do this nationwide. Emergency mental health care. Emergency mental health care. Your child, I have a friend whose child tried to commit suicide. And in the middle of the night, he's in the ambulance with her, taking her to the hospital. And he realized they're not going to check her in unless his insurance company gives him prior authorization. So he's on the phone in the ambulance, and they're denying him coverage. He's got his daughter on the gurney next to him. He happened to know the president of the hospital and called him up and said, I will cover the bills. I'm going to get the insurance company to cover it, or I'll cover it myself. Please let us check in. And they did. But what is that, 0.1% of the American public that could do that, right? And 99.9% of the American public can't do that. So we passed a bill in Illinois that says that if you have emergency mental health care, they cannot deny you coverage for the first 72 hours while you're getting evaluated and taken care of. So I'm just saying health care, affordability, these are things that Democrats forgot to talk about.
Yeah, I think it feels like back to the basics for Democrats. Mr. Mayor, the New York Times did an assessment of what happened in November. And one statistic struck me, and it was that we seem to be a little delusional in the Democratic Party. When we actually think that we're winning, we're actually losing. And what I mean by that is they found a statistic that we've been bleeding support among our base since 2012 in record numbers. That's brown, black, women, youth voters, et cetera. they attributed to a number of factors, but one of them was this waning trust in government. I'm curious, from your vantage point, what do you see as the biggest contributor to the erosion of confidence in elected officials, political parties, institutions, et cetera? And then how do we rebuild that trust and confidence in us to get the job done that the governor's talking about?
Thank you for giving me the easy one.
I wanted us to take a deep breath.
It's a longer answer, but I would say this. From the perspective of having been privileged to travel around the world and represent us, we don't realize how much better lives we lead in this country still. As imperfect as we are, particularly to a lot of countries in the developed, emerging world, and that the world still looks at the United States of America as a place they would give anything to give their kids a chance to get here because of three things. We have public education, we have free and open elections, arguably, you have the ability to determine your destiny. And we now have advanced enough as a country that we have the privilege, the luxury of taking that for granted. And so you have a generations of Americans, and the governor was kind enough to mention the Voting Rights Act. Well, I think I'm probably the oldest one on stage. I turned 71 on Friday. So I was born in 1954. I was born into Jim Crow. I had the vantage point of knowing that my parents couldn't vote when I was born, knowing my parents couldn't pursue dreams because of their race and color, but also knowing the difference it made to have a president in Kennedy and Johnson that believed in a basic proposition: America will be better when everybody gets to play, period. And so I think as that has been taken for granted, then we can sit around and have these debates and have young people tell us it ain't no difference between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, or it doesn't matter what. Well, now I'm saying we done effed around and about to find out.
We are finding out.
And I say it's a painful lesson to learn. But the flip side of that is that if you can step back and take that historical view, we can also get out of this. And don't believe that the problems that we are seeing now are permanent. This is a moment. If you could be indifferent, you can get different. You can make a decision to vote. And no matter how many times you hear somebody in the White House said, oh, I won by a landslide, or the Democrats have lost that. We, for the most part, lost because of the indifference of Democratic voters. Donald Trump got no more votes in this election than he got in 2020. So the difference was our indifference. Now the question is, how do we speak to that?
Right.
And even though we went through an exercise of, and this shouldn't be a partisan discussion, of who voted for Trump and not, we've got to find a way to talk to those people. Because what the governor said is the one undeniable truth. Most of this election, even though I don't agree with, was rooted in a little bit of economic anxiety, and then them blaming that economic anxiety on migrants, on women, on DEI, and all of that.
Biden,
but
too.
it was people's basic fear and worry, where are my kids gonna get a job? And we are at an inflection point as a country that, for the most part, my generation, I would say generationally, the baby boomers and others are worried that we are the last generation that can confidently look at our kids and say, you're gonna have it better than I am. And a lot of our kids don't believe that. So that creates this underlying economic anxiety that I don't think our party has really embraced and spoken to. And you heard that a little bit before. And I'm proud to be a Democrat, but we will beat you to death with our moral superiority.
And intellectual superiority.
And we will lecture you about, all those things I hold dear, when all people want to know is, how am I going to get this kid off my couch and out of my living room and make sure they don't come back home when they get a job? And if we can speak to that reality, and we now have, as the governor said and painted, a real clear line between what the other party does. We don't want to hear about what they say. because we are now the party of faith. We're the party of opportunity. We are the true patriots in this country, and we shouldn't shrink back from that.
Amen. Mr. Governor, you made a point, which is 100% right, that Donald Trump lied in this last election. I remember I was running the opposition for Pelosi in Trump 1.0, and I remember when Kellyanne Conway said, basically, the truth is subjective.
Alternative facts.
Yeah, and then they also introduced alternative facts. And I knew at that moment, we're in for it. Like, this is about to be a hard battle. Have you ever tried to win an argument with a liar? I mean, it's impossible, right? And so you've got this, what we've never seen before, a leader in our nation lying to this extent. You've got an entire party that's perpetuating those lies and apologizing for those lies. And then you layer on top of it with massive amounts of disinformation, domestic, foreign disinformation showing up in our feeds, on the television, among our friends and family members. It's everywhere. It's consuming in our minds, and it's also becoming this corrosive factor. So I'm curious, what do you see is your role or the role of state and local leaders play in confronting false narratives and defending democratic norms in this moment?
So there are a lot of lies that we all get confronted with every day, and you just turn on the news and there's somebody on there. And I don't mean the news anchors so much. I mean the guests, right, who will come on and they'll lie to you. And we saw it, you want to know what corrodes democracy, it's Donald Trump. I mean, it is people who will come and lie to you and then do the exact opposite of what they tell you. And then nobody has any faith. But I will just say that the problem that governors faced and that I faced when I came into office and that I still face is when you say, and this is what Democrats need to focus on, in my view, when you say you're going to do something, try like hell to get it done. And in the trying, first of all, people get faith, and in the doing, they come to believe. And so I've been saying, we hosted the Democratic Convention in Chicago in 2024, and I was so proud of that. And I had some buttons made up, little pins that I handed out to everybody, and it said, "Democrats deliver." Because the thing that people need to grab onto is that we're actually delivering. You know why people have gotten cynical? It's because politicians will lie to, this is forever. Politicians will lie to you, they'll tell you things, and then they don't deliver on the things they lie. You didn't know they were lies till they don't deliver. We Democrats, and this is where governors come in, right? We actually have to deliver. People who vote in Congress and, vote on this bill and vote on that bill, they don't actually have to, all due respect, they don't have to deliver anything. They have to deliver enough votes, I guess, to get the thing passed. But governors, like every day, we confront a problem that we have to actually go do something about. And I get held accountable every day, every week, every year for whether I'm accomplishing the things that I'm telling people we're going to do. When I said we were going to go after the pharmacy benefit managers and lower your pharmaceutical costs, I had to go get enough votes, put the whole thing together. I gave a State of the State speech in which I highlighted it, and then we got it done. So I'm just saying, if we deliver, I think that is the biggest contrast to what Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress are doing. They're delivering, but they're delivering a lie. They told you they were going to do one thing. Now they're doing something completely different. And we Democrats are going to have to, when we take over again, and we will, and I believe we will win in 2026, because I think at a minimum, whether we get our messaging and our strategy right, at a minimum, people are looking at what the Republicans did today, and they're going to say, I can't have any more of that. And so they're going to vote for us. But I'm not saying that's a strategy forever. It's just for 2026. I believe we can win. But we have to go deliver when we retake the Congress and then we retake the White House. No waiting around. We got to have an agenda that we're going to execute on and do it quickly and on behalf of working people and the most vulnerable people in our society.
Absolutely. So we only have about 30 more seconds. So I just really want to close out with the same question to both of you. And that is what, again, as I mentioned at the top of the conversation, people are feeling incredibly disaffected. The morale is low. People are feeling very skeptical of the system and how we get out of this, and unclear about what's next. What does this mean for our country? Will we have a democracy? Will we have elections? Will Trump run for a third term? I mean, there's all these questions that we don't have answers to that's creating a lot of anxiety. But putting that aside, like, what gives you hope in this moment for American democracy?
We are at Essence Fest for a reason. It is the greatest gathering of black women of power, of inspiration across all deals. And as difficult as it is, black women have bailed this country out time and time and time and time again. And I know you're tired. And so, you know, I am from the South, and I'm an old country boy. That's why I don't call me a mayor, not an ambassador. We have a wonderful saying among my family that grew up on farms when you were in despair, thinking things wouldn't change. And they'd always just say, you know, just always remember, the sun don't shine on the same dog's ass every day. So, you know what? Take a moment. Don't park by our pity, but you've saved us before. You can do it again. And we will, while we're here at Essence, we're going to have fun. We're going to speak to our spirit, but we're going to get our act together, and we're going to start planning, and we will do what we've always done, and you will lead us back to a different way. And in the meantime, you know, my new favorite sayings I saw on these T-shirts and mugs: stop worrying about people Harriet would have left behind. So.
But Governor, sisters are exhausted right now. I think we feel like we've been carrying this thing on our back for way too long, and too, you know what I mean, by ourselves. You know, and I sort of challenge us to think about, you know, we gave 92% to the party. What is the party giving us in return for that 92%? And that's what we have to start pressuring the party on. But all that aside, what gives you hope in this moment? Give the sisters some encouragement. Tell us what you're thinking.
Well, Ron gives me hope. I'm not kidding. Look, I think there is a lot to be concerned about in our country, but I think about historically the renewal that over and over again that we experience in this country. Things are better than they were 50 years ago. We may be sliding backward right now. But we will see an American renewal as a result, as a reaction to what's happening right now. And in part, it is because of black women. I mean, black women rescued Joe Biden. Black women, well, helped make Barack Obama. And
shout out to Michelle Obama.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not forget, and they're from Chicago, I might add. But and I'm not exaggerating when I say that it is, there is a coming majority in this country that understands that the challenges of the past are what drive us to do better in the future. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody in this room would acknowledge that. My family emigrated to this country 150 years ago, escaping Russian massacres of Ukrainian Jews. My family arrived with absolutely nothing and managed to survive. By the way, it was public education that allowed my great-grandfather to get a job eventually, right? But he got a public education. There was a social service agency that gave him a place to live. He wouldn't have survived, would not have survived. And first, if he hadn't been let in, but second, and he came here at 9 years old, and it was, by the way, a hospital. He got pneumonia. I'm just going to tell a quick story. He got pneumonia when he was 9 years old, trying to sell Chicago Tribunes on a street corner in the middle of winter. Come to Chicago anyway, by the way. The winters are not that bad. But they're getting better.
Absolutely,
Maybe
they're
the
that
one
bad.
thing global warming is doing is making Chicago. Anyway,
Making Chicago more appealing.
it is. But it was a hospital. He had nothing. They took him to the hospital. They treated him anyway. He had nothing. And they had to burn his clothes because he had lice. He was sleeping in the sub-basement of the Chicago train station. And the doctor gave him $1 when he left and a new pair of clothes and said, go make something of yourself. And look, everybody should be given a chance in this country. And all of us who've seen the challenges of our history know that we've got to make sure that going forward, people are given a fair chance and that we're welcoming and that, but most importantly, that we treat people as equals and we treat people as human beings. And so I am optimistic because I know that humanity exists even in the reddest states, even in the reddest counties, and that humanity is inherent, I think, in all Americans, and we need to remind people about that. So that's my optimistic note.
And thank you, gentlemen. That was a really wonderful conversation, and I think we all learned something from it, and we're inspired by your words and your vision and by your leadership. So one more time, let's give one big round of applause to close out. Yes, thank you. We'll take a quick